What's up, guys? Welcome to Just Right. I'm Paul Manicone. Thank you for joining me. If you're looking for part 3 in the debate series, it will be out shortly. I had to take a break and make a video about the hurricane because I believe the media are missing something. We're going to start with Fox News.
Alejandro Mayorkas sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. Listen.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion from a FEMA program on services for migrants.
That figure is not accurate. I found the real figures, but before I go into this, I need to explain something about FEMA first. Bear with me, it's going to be incredibly boring, but I promise it will make sense at the end. FEMA is split into multiple departments. In 1983, Congress created the Emergency Food and Shelter Program. That was designed to help only Americans who were affected by natural disasters. But in 2019, Congress split the program into two parts. One remained the same, the EFSP, we'll call that Track 1 or SP for short, and they created another program called the EFSP-H, with the H standing for humanitarian. We'll call that Track 2 or SPH for short. The SPH program is designed specifically to help only migrants, and it actually says this on the FEMA website. So when you see the H right here in Track 2, know that this is the program for illegals only. But last year, FEMA changed the name of the EFSP-H to the Shelter and Services Program, or the SSP. Here it is from their website. In 2023, Congress directed Border Protection and FEMA to establish a new Shelter and Services Program, SSP, to replace the EFSP-H. But here's the important part. The EFSP-H continued to operate while FEMA and Border Protection worked to establish the new SSP. So one migrant-only program replaced another migrant-only program. Both of them operating in 2023 because the transition didn't occur until the middle of the year. Two separate programs, both of them to help only migrants. The reason why I'm boring you with all this stuff is because these acronyms appear in a figure I'm about to show you. This is from the FEMA website. Look at 2023. According to the key, the blue part is before they changed the name. That's the SPH, which spends money only on migrants. And the portion above it is after the name was changed to the SSP, which also spends money only on migrants. The media is quoting the $364 million figure, but they're forgetting the other $425 million that was allocated before the name change. Remember, both programs spent money only on migrants, and both were operational last year. Therefore, FEMA didn't spend $364 million on illegals like the media is telling us. The real figure is in the report. I don't know why the media didn't read it, but I did, and I can tell you that the figure they're giving for 2023, that $363.8 million figure, is garbage. And they admit this in the report. Read it with me. Congress authorized up to $785 million to be used to provide shelter and supportive services to migrants encountered by DHS through the EFSP-H while the SSP was established. So the money spent on both programs, the SPH and the SSP, needs to be added together to get the actual amount of money FEMA spent on migrants last year. Shame on the media for not digging deeper. When you see this from the FEMA website, and it says $363.8 million was used for illegals, realize that this is what they spent under the newly created Shelter and Services Program. It ignores what they spent prior to the name change. We need to add the other $425 million that was allocated before the name change occurred when it was still called the SPH. When we add these two together, we see that FEMA allocated $789 million for illegals in 2023 alone. Now let's go back and see what was spent in other years. In 2024, so far, FEMA spent another $641 million on illegals, which puts us at just over $1.4 billion. Plus, we need to add the other $260 million for years 2021 and 2022. When we add all of this up, we see that Joe and Kamala allocated more than $1.7 billion of FEMA's money for illegals. Notice the $30 million allocated in 2019 under the Trump administration. So for those who claim that Trump has no heart, that $30 million proves otherwise, even though it was just 1.7% of what Joe and Kamala allocated for illegals. But I have no problem with Trump allocating a smaller amount for migrants because Trump puts American citizens first. And this report proves that. The bottom line is FEMA spent more than the $1.7 billion that the media is telling you. Actually, the media gave you the lower figure because they didn't do their homework. Reading through this report, I found some other things that are going to anger you. The eligible expenses are listed in Appendix A and Appendix B. The ones listed for the Americans is in Appendix B, and the ones listed for the illegals is in Appendix A. When you compare them side by side, you're going to see some things that are very disturbing. Look at the eligible expenses for Americans in Appendix B. It states that the EFSP program allows limited local transportation only. It specifically states it does not allow for transportation to another city or to a relative or friend's house, and it also does not allow for any air travel. Now let's compare that to the eligible expenses for the migrants. Look at the second bullet point. If you're illegal, FEMA will pay to move you to another city or a state, and they will even buy you a $700 plane ticket to get you there. There are some other benefits you get only if you're illegal. Look at the last three bullet points. First, you get a lawyer. The lawyer doesn't do it for free. The lawyer gets paid, but the illegal doesn't have to pay him because you are. The second thing they get is a translator. Now, I know many American citizens, and I'm sure you do as well, who are older and don't speak English that well. They don't get a translator. Only the illegal does. The third bullet point lists clothing, including shoes and belts. If you're illegal, you get free clothing. But if you're an American citizen, clothing is listed as an ineligible expense, unless it's underwear or diapers. Now, I want you to think of something. Remember, the SP program is for Americans and migrants, but the SPH and the SSP are for the illegals only. Now, assume there's a natural disaster and people want to flee that area. One person asks for a plane ticket to go to New York. FEMA will question that person to determine whether or not they are an American citizen. And if he or she says that they are, FEMA will respond by saying, "We can't help you." But if the guy standing next to this person raises his hand and says, "I want to go to New York too, and I'm here illegally," FEMA will respond by saying, "Let's get you that ticket." That's Joe and Kamala's America. And it's another reason why I tell the illegals to stay illegal. Because once you become an American citizen, the Democrat Party, who claim to care so much about you, will kick you to the curb with the rest of us. Now let's go to the government response. Here are two pictures taken by some of my friends who went there to help. The first picture shows the local residents helping each other. You can see they have water, diapers, wipes, shopping carts full of stuff. And look at this truck. They're giving out gasoline for generators and for cars, for those who still have cars. You would think that was a FEMA site, right? No. Let me show you what FEMA has at the same location. Nothing. Just a couple of empty folding tables and some chairs. Now, I don't want to take that photo out of context. Maybe FEMA had just shown up and hadn't gotten to work yet. But I can tell you that both of those photos were taken within just a few minutes of each other and at the same location. So it appears, at least in this photo, that FEMA doesn't seem overly concerned with saving anyone. Well, you have to ask yourself, if they're not concerned about that, what is FEMA concerned about? I went to their website to find out. FEMA's first goal is not to save lives during natural disasters. Their first goal is to instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. Read the bottom. By instilling equity as a foundation of emergency management, the emergency management community can build a more resilient nation. Here is Deanne Criswell. She is the head of FEMA. Listen to her obsession with equity and admit that she thinks about it every day.
What are you and FEMA doing to prioritize equity when it comes to disaster recovery? This is something that I think about every day, and this was one of my priorities when I first came into the agency to serve in this role as FEMA administrator. I took the time to reflect as I was going through the nomination process about what are the areas that I really wanted to focus on when I came to FEMA in this role. And through my time as a local emergency manager, whether it was in New York City or whether it was in Aurora, Colorado, but also my time as a federal coordinating officer during my first period with FEMA, working with states and local jurisdictions and understanding the diversity of the communities, not just cities, but the neighborhoods within the cities and the challenges that they face. And how do we make sure we understand what their barriers are to accessing the programs that they're eligible for? So we put it in my strategic plan. I have 3 goals, and equity is one of my goals.
Equity isn't just one of her goals, it is her number 1 priority. Listen to her confirm this to Senator Josh Hawley.
Let me ask you about something that FEMA announced earlier this year, February, to be exact, February 22nd, the new Equity Action Plan. That plan says that FEMA's goals include generating a FEMA-wide definition of equity and a framework for implementing equity in all agency programs. And I've got the definition of equity in front of me. It's pretty long. It's 89 words, references skin color, references sexual orientation. And I also noticed in your written testimony, you list as your first priority instilling equity as a foundation of emergency management. What does that mean exactly?
So equity is my number 1 priority in the strategic plan, and each of the objectives within my priorities, one focuses externally on how we deliver our services to communities, one focuses internally on how our workforce is going to support that, and another one talks about how we partner with other stakeholders in order to deliver our programs. We have an equity enterprise steering group that's made up of leadership from across my agency to talk more broadly about the culture of FEMA and the diversity of FEMA and how we can improve that.
FEMA doesn't just obsess about equity when it comes to race, they're also obsessed with pronouns. Listen to Riley Hurst, the Director of Training and Education at FEMA, tell us that not only do they need to focus on migrants, but more specifically, migrant trans women.
Being a migrant trans woman, there is an undocumented concern. There is also a concern of whether they would trust the places that are offering shelter that are faith-based because of the way they've been responded to in the past. Then if they are accepted, what would happen in terms of misgendering, in terms of bedrooms and bathrooms, etc. And then in addition, public safety once they're inside from those who are actually sheltering with them.
Now you know why FEMA spent $1.7 billion on illegals and left nothing for Americans. Now let's go to Mayorkas. You heard him in the beginning of this video say that they're running out of money. But in June, he was saying that they were tremendously prepared for any natural disaster.
FEMA is tremendously prepared. This is what we do. This is what they do. And the key here, Rebecca, is also to make sure that the communities who are potentially impacted are prepared as well. And it's not just hurricanes and wildfires, also extreme heat, which certainly some parts of the United States are already experiencing.
He didn't just mention hurricanes. He said we were ready for any natural disasters, including fire and extreme heat. And of course, that was a lie. Here's another liar in the Harris administration, Karine Jean-Pierre. Listen to her response when asked if FEMA was spending money on migrants.
Former President Trump is accusing the Biden administration of using FEMA funding to support undocumented migrants. How is the White House responding to that?
I mean, it's just categorically false. It is not true. It is a false statement.
Categorically false. FEMA is not spending any money on migrants, even though FEMA listed in their own report. Here she is 2 years ago.
FEMA regional administrators have been meeting with city officials on site to coordinate available federal support from FEMA and other federal agencies. Funding is also available through FEMA's emergency food and shelter program to eligible local governments and non-for-profit organizations upon request to support humanitarian relief for migrants. We'll continue to do what we can as a federal government to support these cities as we rebuild our asylum processing system after it was gutted by the Trump administration.
Are you surprised she lied so easily? I know we should be used to it by now. Not only did she lie today, but she lied in that older clip in 2022 when she accused Trump of gutting the program. Meanwhile, according to FEMA's own reporting, the program began in 2019 under the Trump administration. So she's lying today and she's lying back then. Now let's go to Kamala explain how she's going to help the victims.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met, such as food, baby formula, and the like. And you can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected.
That's not only incredibly insulting, but it is beyond disgusting. I tweeted something about this that I think sums it up perfectly. It's one thing to hear those numbers, but when you see all those zeros, it really puts it in perspective. It might be more than $170 billion given to Ukraine. Do you know we're paying Ukraine so their small businesses can stay open? We're also paying Ukrainian citizens Social Security. In addition to payments of $1,371 per month, Ukrainian citizens are also getting additional financial support in the form of the TANF program, Medicaid, and the SNAP program. But for American citizens who just lost family members in this storm, they get a one-time payment of $750. What does $750 do when you just watched your house slide into the river? And it's not just FEMA who's obsessed with equity. Here's Kamala actually admitting that hurricane relief must be given out based on race.
It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions. We have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. And if we want people to be in an equal place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities.
Spoken like a true socialist. Today we learned that Kamala Harris is going to give $157 million to, I know you're thinking what state, right? Because Carolina seems to have been hit the hardest, but you also have Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. No. She's going to give $157 million to Lebanon. Here's the tweet. I am concerned about the security and well-being of civilians suffering in Lebanon and will continue working to help meet the needs of all civilians there. To that end, the United States will provide nearly $157 million in additional assistance to the people of Lebanon for essential needs such as food, shelter, water protection, and sanitation. Do you still deny that the Democrat Party puts Americans last? Always? Now here's Joe. I didn't want to put him in the video, but I had to. They finally got him off the beach and asked him if he could have done more to help the hurricane victims. Listen to his response.
On the hurricane, Mr. President, why weren't you and Vice President Harris here in Washington commanding this weekend?
I was commanding. I was on the phone for at least 2 hours yesterday and the day before as well. I commanded. It's called a telephone. And all my security people.
How disgusted are you to hear him say that? It's called a telephone? Is he serious? The media attacked Bush relentlessly for looking out the window to survey the damage of Katrina prior to landing. They were furious that it took him 3 days to get on site. Meanwhile, we're more than a week into this, and Joe says that he's been on the phone. The media accused Bush of nothing more than a photo op. Speaking of photo ops, did you see Kamala? Here she is pretending to be in command to help the hurricane victims. Notice two things. Number one, the paper's blank. And number two, her headphones aren't even plugged in. One of my videos about Kamala proves that everything about her is fake. I'll put a link up. Please click on it. I think you'll enjoy it. There was a follow-up question of Joe at the White House. This is even more embarrassing.
What do the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President?
Okay?
What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about. They're getting everything they need. And they're very happy across the board.
I was wondering what storm you're talking about? This guy has no clue. By the way, his mental acuity not brought up in either of the debates by the corrupt media. But he says everybody is happy across the board. They're getting everything they need. I don't have an answer for that. He's either completely delusional or completely out of touch. Last thing about Joe, here he is blaming this on climate change.
Nobody can deny the impact of climate crisis anymore. At least I hope they don't. They must be brain dead if they do.
Never let a crisis go to waste, right? Isn't that the Democrat mantra? I don't know how Trump can't be leading by double digits at this point. The polls have to be wrong. Anyway, I'm running along. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying to the end. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. Please give me a thumbs up, share it, and comment. I read and answer all of the comments. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.
You know, we have the chief of staff for President Obama is an old friend of mine and my husband's, and was in the White House when Bill was there, and he said, you know, never waste a good crisis. And when it comes to the economic crisis, don't waste it when it can have a very positive impact on climate change and energy security, and that's what we're trying to do.